welcome now to Midday's Senator Josh Harkins. He represents District 20 that incorporates Rankin County. In the past, he's been the chairperson of the Senate Finance Committee. Good morning, Senator Harkins. Thanks so much for coming in, sir.
Good morning, Gerard. How are you doing?
Are you still just Rankin County? You're
just Rankin County, yeah. Okay. I shrunk again in 2012. My district contained part of Madison. I lost it in that redistricting, and then this one I lost a couple of precincts in Rankin County. So I'm getting smaller and smaller, which is a good thing. It's growth.
Yeah, I mean, that's because you've got more population, so your district has concentrated a bit. So we're off to the races with no bomb threats today, huh?
Knock on wood.
Good grief.
Yeah.
What a way to start the deal.
What a way to bring in the new year.
Man, oh, man. So you guys you've met a little bit so far, and then you're scheduled to gavel in. You told me 4 o'clock
today.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. And looks like we're going to have a little bit of inclement weather, so hope everybody travels up here safely.
Well, we just heard on the news that the schools in South Mississippi are closing early, I think, to avoid and get the kids out of there before the bad weather moves through. It's expected to be a good bit more intense in that area of the state. So we're hopeful and prayerful that this thing gets in and out and doesn't do anything. We don't need to start the year off with that. So you got a few new members in the Senate. 7.
We got 7 new members in the Senate, and I think when I came in, we had 15 or 16 new members.
Wow.
And each cycle, there was about 12 to 15 new members last two other cycles, and so this one was actually kind of a smaller class.
And you've got, of course, no change at the lieutenant governor level, so you stay the same in that respect. What are you expecting with respect to committee assignments, committee chair?
Well, I was listening this morning. I heard him say that he's going to make those announcements this week. So we met with him earlier before the session started and kind of handed in our list of areas we're interested in, and I'll kind of echo the first term of his lieutenant governor's when he made the appointments the first term. I think I got a lot of the committees that I'm really interested in. It's important in my area, public health and finance, and a lot of these. And there are other committees that you don't serve on, but you still kind of pay attention and watch. And whether it's universities and colleges, highways, I mean, those things are important to all senators. And so I'll be interested to see where we all line up here by the end of the week.
So are you willing to share with us what your priorities are? Or you're not your priorities, I mean your preferences, I should say, for committee? You want to stay in finance?
Yeah, same. I enjoyed finance. I learned a lot about state government. Every year you learn something about our government. You learn something about how the process works and what goes on. I think that I really sunk into a lot of issues. I mean, first year was COVID, and I mean, it just kind of turned everything upside down, and it forced us to have to really change a lot of the things we were doing. So it forced us to kind of learn some things and try some new things out. And through the years, whether it's tax cuts, different facets of tax cuts, whether it was the income tax cut we passed, learned a lot. I mean, we dug in on that. We had hearings over that summer. We really looked at a lot of different aspects of our tax policy in the state. And it really opened my eyes of all the moving parts behind the scenes. And, people just, if you're not in there looking around, peeking under the tent, it's hard to really fathom all the things that are going on and the kind of the moving parts that make up our tax policy.
That's true.
And when you change one facet of it, it impacts so many other areas. And so I really enjoyed it. We worked on the software sales tax on software as a service. That was a big deal we worked on last year. So there's just a lot of moving parts that we've looked at and tried to streamline and make better for our businesses in our state to grow and prosper, and individuals as well.
Okay. So let's actually talk about priorities and kind of what you're thinking about, what the agenda looks like there in the Senate or in the legislature in general.
Well, me personally, I represent an area, ever since I got elected, I remember receiving in December this first piece of mail, and it had the unemployment rate for the entire state. And I looked down and saw Rankin County was the lowest, had the lowest unemployment rate in the state. And every month I looked at that, it was the lowest unemployment rate all the way up until this past year. So for almost 12 years solid, Rankin County had the lowest unemployment rate in the state. And I kind of took that as, what's important in my district are jobs or opportunities for employment and development and growth. And it's an area that's grown. Obviously, that's why my district has shrunk the last 2 times. So I feel like that's an important part of what people in my district are looking for. And under that umbrella, there's a lot of things that go into that. It's roads, it's infrastructure, it's education, it's a lot of things that are important, healthcare, that make up why the district is growing, why there's development. There's good leadership at the local level, the leadership through our local mayors and our supervisors, a lot of communication. So, those are the things that I'm interested in. Those are the things I want to keep working on. We put a lot of work in infrastructure in Rankin County and elsewhere. So I think locally those are the things that are important to me. But on a statewide basis, I think our tax policy, we're always looking at improving. We're always looking at how we can do better. Same with education and healthcare. So all those things are important, and there's a lot of room to work on.
Okay. So let's get into some specifics, if we can, with respect to tax policy. I think the governor's made it clear he still is prioritizing full elimination of the income tax. That always comes up. It
always comes up, and I'll remind your listeners. You and I talked about this a while back. Our income tax makes up roughly about 32% of our revenue to the general fund.
Yeah.
And when you go and look at what would it take to eliminate $2 billion of revenue, because essentially that's what you're doing. You're saying, hey, we're going to forego this money to get back to the taxpayers, which is always a good thing. But doing it responsibly and how you do it matters. And so we looked at, people say, well, cut some expenses. Well, what would you have to cut in order to make a $2 billion transfer from the general fund to taxpayers,
which is a third,
of our revenue. Yeah, I think our sales tax generates about 36% of our revenue.
Well, I'm saying, Senator, from a cut perspective, we'd be cutting a third of government spending.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, if you eliminated these agencies and their employees and the activities they perform, the Attorney General's office, the Auditor's office, the Secretary of State's office, Wildlife, Game and Fish, Corrections, Mental Health, Department of Health, Department of Human Services, Child Protective Services, Department of Revenue, Department of Public Safety, Homestead Exemption, Military, and the Department of Rehab Services, that would only cut $1.4 billion.
Okay.
So
need another $600 million.
You need another $600 million, and what's going to be left of government and the services that citizens expect many of those agencies to provide. So growing out of this is how we're going to accomplish this, I think. And so we've taken a step where we are going to be at a 4% flat tax, and this year we've dropped it from 5% to 4.7%. We eliminated the 4% bracket last year. This year will be the tax rate will be 4.7.
Yep.
Next year will be 4.4. The following year, 4%.
Yep.
Taking incremental bites of the apple, if you will, I think is the direction we're headed. It's we can certainly look at adding on to those. We can look at how we're going to adjust those. But for people to think that we're going to wholesale just eliminate our income tax, personal income tax, in one fell swoop is just not. It's not reality. It's not practical. It impacts the services that we're providing, and it also impacts businesses. There's a lot of things that go into how you structure an income tax cut. And I think if you look around the country, we'll wind up being the 5th lowest in the country. Now, other states are taking efforts at cutting taxes, so I think we're always going to be competing with those. But I think you've heard so much talk about the workforce participation rate. I think one way to encourage workforce participation is to cut taxes and give people more of their money for them to have. This is one way to do it. It's going to be an incremental, from my perspective, I think being responsible and incrementally cutting it and not overextending ourselves is important, because there's a lot of other factors. There's a lot of other issues that are going on besides income tax. There's health care, there's PERS. We talked about a lot of these things that are out there, and we got a lot of problems to solve, and unfortunately it takes dollars and cents to accomplish that.
Let's continue the discussion on the other side of the break. Senator Josh Harkins is our guest in the Element Wealth studio. We're talking to Senator Josh Harkins. He represents Rankin County and also served as the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. We expect him to be in that role again. So with respect, just final kind of thoughts on tax reform. The governor is really pushing for full elimination. And Lieutenant Governor has been lukewarm at best, I would say, on it. I think the Speaker, Jason White, he would put that at high on his list of priorities. Being methodical, being responsible, being thoughtful. I agree with all those. Some sort of plan, Senator, that would phase out the income tax over a period of time based on achievement of certain targets, be they. I don't really think it ought to be revenue targets. I think it ought to be on just surplus targets. If we are able to spend money to operate the state in a responsible way and produce sufficient income to cover that and have some left over, gives us a little breathing room maybe to start paring down on the income tax.
Gerard, you're speaking in common sense form. I think that rational people can come to that conclusion. How you implement that,
sure.
I think that's where the difference is. And we took the approach like, all right, let's set a goal and let's implement a known point of kind of a conclusion. Like we're gonna cut taxes to 4%. Okay, we've done that. As we're going through this process, if our revenues are still increasing, if we're still looking like we're on a trajectory where we can fund government at a responsible rate, we're taking care of any of our liabilities, we've paid off a ton of debt, we've done a lot of things that have been fiscally responsible, and I think it's showing in the situation we're in right now. But as we go through, we don't know what next year is going to hold. We don't know. I mean, you and I have had plenty of conversations about inflation and about revenue and all these things. I think it's hard to, if you just say, okay, we're gonna make a trigger out there. I mean, if the first plan would have gone in, you never know if you're going to cut the income tax.
That's
right.
Right.
Eliminate it.
You're
just doing it to say you've done it, but you have not physically done it.
You and I agree on that.
What we are doing is we are physically cutting the rate down to a certain point, and if we're taking incremental bites at the apple, in 4 years we're going from 5 to 4. And who's to say what we can do over the next 4 years after that, or incrementally moving forward. But we also have things that have popped up on our radar that we weren't expecting 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, like PERS?
Like PERS, yes, that you have talked about extensively and others have talked about. But that is a problem. That's a liability. It shows up on, it is something we've got to take with us wherever we go. And so how do you fix that? How do you prepare to deal with that issue? How do we deal with all the other issues that we have? So, just going out there and saying, hey, let's do a trigger, and every time we get to a certain point, we're going to cut the rate. I think in order to be responsible, you have to take a snapshot of where we are whenever you do something like that. And I think it provides stability because we know exactly where we're going. We're taking cuts to a certain point. To me, that's the way I feel comfortable doing it. It's decisive. It's a known entity where you're going to wind up, and to me that's what a lot of people that I talk with in the Capitol feel comfortable doing. Okay. And I think it's prudent. I mean, the stories of Kansas, obviously it's a different scenario what they went through, but the fact still remains that they had to go back and raise taxes because they overextended themselves.
They did.
I think that what we're doing right now is I think prudent. We haven't borrowed any debt in the last 3 years. We haven't issued any new authorization for debt in the last 2-3 years. We haven't. We've paid off $900 million of debt. We're doing things like you would do in your home. And so I think we're being prudent. We're also giving a tax cut, and I want to continue to do tax cuts. Like I said, we talked about the workforce participation rate. I think a way to encourage that is to cut taxes and have people keep more of their own money.
Yeah.
And I want to do that as fast as humanly possible, but being responsible and practical about it.
Well, and honestly, Senator, based on the cuts we've already implemented, a lot of the folks that are on the sidelines and not working, if they went into the workforce, you kind of assume that they'd probably be earning incomes that would mostly be
no longer paying taxes.
No tax liability.
But part of that is the latter. We want to provide jobs that provide for upward mobility.
Sure, we do,
and that's what I want. I want everybody to be paying.
I agree.
Taxes because they're making more money.
Well, I totally agree.
Which would allow us to cut taxes again, because the more people, bringing people into the state, bringing jobs into the state is the lifeblood, I think, of one of the things that's most important that we do up there is creating an environment for businesses to start and to thrive, and the ones that are here to continue to thrive.
Totally agree.
To prosper and to provide jobs for our citizens, and to provide better and higher paying jobs. Opportunity for them.
I'll share kind of my wish here is that the House, the Senate, the governor can work on something that does at least create a path to get that done. I'm talking about full elimination in a responsible, methodical way. And I mean a path. I'm not in the camp that says, we could just cut this 1/3 of revenue next year.
Yeah.
And I don't think the governor believes that as well. As high a priority as this is to him, I think he realizes that's not the case. And you and I have talked about this. And then again, we got this, I called it in my article, the elephant in the room, PERS. And you're a business person. You work with business people. I was as well. You always got to address that top nagging issue before you can do anything.
Yeah.
You got to, because it ain't going away. And that is probably a good way to describe PERS. You know this. You and I have talked about it off and online. The PERS board knows that. The executive director, folks in the Capitol. You guys got to take it up.
We have. We've met with, I met with Ray Higgins, the executive director, out of session this past year in the fall before Christmas. I think they're coming with some recommendations that they've thought about and looked at, and we'll have conversations, I'm sure, in the new session with him and with their board, and try to come up with some solutions. But a lot of the solutions that we're looking at or that may be proposed are long-term solutions.
Yeah, they don't fix it today.
They don't fix the math problem we have today.
Like the next 25 or 30 years math problem.
And, there are employees that are 3-year, 4-year, 5-year employees that need the system to be healthy in 25, 30 years when they retire for the next 35, 40 years of their life.
That's right.
And so it's important. It's an important issue. And I think I've heard Speaker White reference it a couple times on different interviews he's been in, that they're ready to look at it, and it's been kicked down the road long enough. And
he is. He's expressed that to me personally as well.
Mm-hmm.
He read the article and called me to ask me a couple of questions. And I would like to point out, for the benefit of the audience, and I know you know this as well, but the PERS folks have read it, and nobody's come back and said, hey, you got this wrong as far as the facts. I got it from them, and that was my goal, was just to sort of inform and kind of lay out the issue and the challenges. But that's got to be addressed as well. And then we got this healthcare industry problem in our state. I think we got a really good thing done, the governor's proposal to reform the Medicaid payment model, which is going to inject a fair amount of money into our hospitals in the existing Medicaid program. But we're not out of the woods
yet. Medicaid program, yeah. And a lot of this is I mean, not a lot, but some of it is internal. The way that we're delivering health care it has to evolve.
Yeah.
I think obviously with population shifts, and when your customer base is not there, you can't just continue in perpetuity without changing, without morphing into something that's more efficient for the times that we're in. But we've taken steps. We've made investments in nursing schools and at several of the community colleges and UMC to provide more staff. Because that was a really touchy part of our healthcare delivery system, was that we just didn't have the employees there.
Yeah.
And so we're taking steps, but it's an investment in that. It's an investment in several other areas, not just healthcare, infrastructure, roads, bridges that we're constantly putting money in to make a better Mississippi. But we're gonna keep at it.
Okay. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Always good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Senator Josh Harkins has been our guest. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.